Hello and welcome back. So our first speaker for today is the beautiful Michelle Mathews, who, and this conversation is all around marketing, sponsorships and partnerships. So if you are interested in a career in the marketing or advertising industry, then this is a perfect conversation for you. So before we bring Michelle live, I'm just going to give you a brief introduction on who she is and what she's actually achieved in her career. So Michelle is an absolute total powerhouse. At only 29 years of age, she is a marketing manager at the financial services company at Medibank. Michelle is born and bred in Melbourne. She has completed a Bachelor of Business Marketing at RMIT University and really has honed her craft working predominantly in the financial services sector and for the majority of her career to date. Michelle has worked on some of the most largest brands and campaigns in Australia, including those for Amy, CGU, NRMA, Coles, just to name a few. Michelle's trajectory has been growing steadily since her time at uni, and we are very excited to have her here today to talk about careers and the financial services sector, but really just to give you an insights into the marketing partnerships capacity and in the industry. So let's bring Michelle live. Michelle, welcome to CareerCon.
Hey, Kura, thanks for having me.
So thank you very much for being here today. We are just super pumped to be able to unpack everything that you've done in your career, and especially to give some advice to people that want to follow in your footsteps. So before we get going, are you able to, take us back in time, explain a little bit about your time at high school, where you come from, what you studied at uni, and how you kind of led you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I had a fairly good experience at high school. I do remember at the time when I was about sort of 16, 17, 18, thinking that the school was just a little bit all too hard. But on reflection, I realised it was actually a really fun, great time in my life. And I guess although the worries at the time felt huge and, you've got every right to feel worried or anxious about school and studies, I think you really have to make the most of the support of the resources at school, your teachers, your counsellors, your friends. And I think for me at high school, I always got reasonably good marks and I always got along with my school teachers. But I think above all, I really enjoyed school from a social perspective. And although I did get decent marks, I'm not going to lie, I probably could have pushed a little bit harder with my study and I probably could have gotten a higher ATAR score. But for me, I'm still the same to this day. I never stressed myself out to the point of no return. And I do think that mindset has helped me transition nicely into my career and in high pressure roles. And, at the same time, I do think that all school students should always put their best foot forward. And, I think putting your best foot forward doesn't necessarily mean that you're dedicated 100% to study at every point of the year. I don't think that's necessarily healthy for you either. I think it's about putting your best foot forward is really about balancing your study with your hobbies and building strong relationships with friends. Because realistically, I think you need this skill because it'll positively impact the rest of your career and working life. I think the question, do I think school helped me get to where I am today? I think so. I'm a strong believer that, you need a strong network around you. And ultimately, I think that is where high school, that's where those skills develop and where you learn how to develop those relationships with your peers and teachers and authorities, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So, from what we can see is that you were, you tried at high school, but it wasn't like the end of the earth if you didn't get the highest marks. No. And it's interesting because you did actually go to uni and you went to RMIT. Why did you choose that university? And do you think that people in general, if they want to get into a marketing industry, do you think that it's important that they actually go to school, go to university or further education?
I think it depends what you want to do. So I think if you asked me 12 years ago when I was thinking about what university courses I wanted to do, I would have told you there was absolutely no other way but to do a bachelor's degree at uni. And it really just felt like there was no other option back then. But I think knowing what I know now, my mindset has changed a little. Of course, if you want to be in a profession that requires those qualifications, lawyer, doctor, nurses, then it's really necessary that you do go to uni. But for marketing, I think there's so many different routes that you can go down. And I will admit I did have a fairly, I guess, traditional trajectory when it came to uni. I got into a business marketing course at RMIT. I graduated. I got into a marketing role. But I'd say that a fair portion of the people that I work with or have worked with in the past in marketing have come from so many different directions in terms of their study and experience. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach. And, now, like at the moment, I can see that there's these awesome courses at unis at diploma level that provide you with the industry experience quite early on in the course, which I think is really invaluable. And I think for those that don't get in the course that they want or aren't currently studying in the course that they want, there's always other options and opportunities to do a shorter course or transfer into an undergrad if they require it.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. There is plenty different roads to get to where you need to get to. And sometimes, when you're in high school and you've got exams, and especially in the year that we're in now, where, the world is changing at such a fast pace, it's no longer where you just go from high school to university and then you just land a job. There are plenty of ways that you can get to where you want to get to. So thank you for explaining the undergraduate courses and stuff as well, because it's really important for people to understand that there's lots of different ways to get to where you want to get to. I think one of the central themes that we're kind of focusing on for CareerCon and over the next couple of days is this whole notion about skills and transferable skills, and as opposed to getting all of these degrees and potentially going on to study further, maybe it is all about working on then transferable skills and focusing on those. Now, are you able to sort of just elaborate on that, and what do you think is your best skill?
I might go with the sort of, getting into marketing and either going down the traditional marketing path or the digital marketing path. So, I guess for those that don't have background around how marketing works, there's traditional marketing, which is kind of, your print ads, your TV, radio, outdoor billboards, and digital marketing. And digital marketing really like the tactics and channels to connect with, customers where they spend a lot of their time, which is online. So, from digital advertising and email marketing and online content and search engine optimization, I think there's a spectrum of channels and fall under the umbrella of digital marketing. And I suggest doing your research if you want to get into this space. But I think what I've found is, working in marketing, you might enter into a role and go down either direction. And I find, with digital marketing, you use tools like analytics dashboards to monitor the campaigns that you run in real time and monitor their success. And I think from my experience, those who specialize in digital marketing are quite analytical, and you don't know that you're analytical until you are in the role. So I think, there's also skills, particularly in that space, that you can bring from other roles, whether it be in data analyst roles or any other role that's not quite marketing. So I think there are a few transferable skills that you can bring over. So I think, and even for me, I think my role's not primarily focused on digital marketing, but I think a lot of the campaigns I produce involve those channels, and I need to be aware of how they work. So I think if naturally you find yourself excelling in a space, in a particular space, whether it's in your workplace or whether it's in your subjects, you'll naturally start to seek out roles where that particular area is a focus. And I think the question was, what's my best skill? I think I have fairly good people skills and self-awareness. And a lot of my role involves campaign management or project management and coordinating a lot of people to deliver a campaign. So it's important to understand how everyone ticks and work out the best strategy to deliver something on time. Yeah.
Oh, well, self-awareness is definitely something that they don't talk enough about, you know, and particularly in this kind of environment that we're finding ourselves in at the moment, and in particular, you know, students at high school, or even students that are involved in, you know, university or college or TAFE at the moment, you know, just being aware of the world around them, and actually just adjusting the course where you see fit. So it's almost not about the fact that, you know, it's the end of the earth if you actually don't get into, you know, for example, the marketing degree that you studied at RMIT. It's about learning about those skills and actually knowing when to pivot and when to change and when to sort of, you know, be self-aware. I think that's an awesome skill. So thanks for that, Michelle. You know, I'm going to, you know, touch on your actual career now and what you do, because let's be honest, you've worked for some incredible brands, you know, and not only in the financial services sector, you know, in not-for-profit as well, at Headspace. And, you know, you've really, you know, in 29 years, you've actually really been able to work for some incredible campaigns. So what are some of the best campaigns that you've worked on? Like, explain them to us, explain what your actual role is within these campaigns, and what your favorite is.
Where do I start? So, I mean, I feel incredibly lucky to work at some of the organisations I have been at. I guess to give you some background, I started my career at Suncorp Group when I was still studying marketing at RMIT. So, you know, for those who don't know, Suncorp owns a number of brands that you'd see on TV, Amy, Apia, Bingle, and quite a few others. So I was able to be exposed to some very elite marketing and just, you know, general business acumen very early on in my career. And from there, I worked pretty hard, you know, juggling this marketing role at Suncorp, you know, in addition to finishing my marketing degree. And I think I did get a little bit burnt out at that point, which is why I ended up leaving and taking a break and backpack through Central America for 3 months, which I highly recommend. And then when I got back, I scored a pretty decent role at IAG, which is a top 20 ASX company, the biggest insurer in Australia, working on a number of brands, as Kura said, but primarily in partnerships and sponsorships. And I was there for about 5 years when, you know, before I decided to move into the not-for-profit space, which is Headspace, and that's our National Youth Mental Health Foundation. I called this a bit of a career cleanse because I wanted to work in a role that was completely purpose-led, and with the opportunity to give back. And I loved my time there and learnt so much. But I will admit that working in that environment is completely different to that of the corporate world, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it's all dependent on personality and what you're looking for in a role. Which campaign did I like the most? What was the most rewarding? I think one of my favourite that I've worked on is a sponsorship campaign with CGU. I think we've got some imagery here. If you aren't familiar with how sponsorship marketing works, essentially in most instances, a company will pay a set fee to sponsor a sporting team or an event or an initiative or a charity or whatever it is. But my job as a marketer and a sponsorship manager is to leverage this sponsorship and get, you know, a little more for your money through campaigns and awareness, and really show that, you know, your brand is more than just a logo and a jumper or naming rights for an event. So the campaign that I worked on, which just popped up on the screen before, was for CG's sponsorship of Collingwood Football Club and in AFL, and specifically for our sponsorship of the women's team, which was something we were really proud to sponsor. So we commissioned some really cool street artists to design and physically paint 2 large-scale murals on a building of some of the players in the Collingwood AFL women's team. And I think for us it was really to make an impactful statement that CG not only champions diversity but backs ambitious people, and especially ambitious women that are breaking barriers. So this particular campaign, you know, we got a lot of foot traffic, and these murals were like, you know, got a whole heap of media coverage, and it was really exciting because I think it's the attention that these women do deserve. And I'm really proud of this piece of work and being able to showcase female athletes like heroes. And I think it just goes to show that if you want to be a marketer, just because a brand sounds like it would be boring to work for, CGU for example, don't let it turn you off, because it's actually these brands you get to have the most fun with.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting fact, because I remember back early in my early days in my career, I really wanted to work on the big brands, like these, and the brands that I thought would be, really interesting, like Adidas and at the time Sass and Bite and sort of brands like that. But as you get into the career, you realize that some of these sectors, like the financial services sector, you've probably got really big budgets and can really make such an impact with what you do. Just on that, with what you're saying before about the campaign with CGU, whereabouts were the murals, and can you kind of explain, so within your team that you work in and within your job, is that something that you guys actually come up with internally, or do you use lots of different people to sort of help bring that idea to life?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, campaign management, you're coordinating a lot of different moving parts. I think probably for that particular campaign, you use the support of a creative agency who might, in conjunction with me and some other people in the team, come up with a brand idea which is based on our brand strategy and our objectives and what we want to achieve. And for us at that point in time, it was, we really stood for, embracing diversity and backing ambitious people. And in order to do that and get a campaign like that up and running, we needed the support of the creatives to get that up and running. And that was run in Collingwood and Fitzroy and some really heavy foot traffic areas. Yeah.
Well, we've got some really great questions that are coming through too, Michelle. So I'm just going to, as we go through the conversation, I'll just ask you a couple of the viewer questions, and we'll see how we go from there. So a really great question that came through this morning was in regards to, how do you get into a role that you have no experience in for a graduate? If you're kind of looking to pivot, how do you get into that role if you have no experience at all?
I think I've mentioned it before. I think, what I did when I was at uni is I managed to somehow get into an admin role at Suncorp, and then I moved my way into the marketing team. So I think, when you're at uni, I think it's completely, I think it's invaluable. I think you should always get work experience, whether it's an internship, whether it's a part-time job, whether it's getting a mentor in that industry. I think the way of the world now is you go into a graduate role and they actually do expect some experience from you. So I think I just, don't hesitate to contact the companies of in the industry that you want to get in, and ask if you can do a couple of days, a couple of days of work experience, or maybe they're looking for an admin person or an assistant, or just something, anything, or talking to someone in that industry. I think it's really about building your network and getting as much experience before you actually get into that graduate role.
Yeah, awesome. Great advice. So another question that's come through is, how strong do you think the marketing industry will remain in the current climate that we're approaching?
I think at the start, when lockdown sort of first started, we were a little bit worried. We find that what we find is with marketing budgets, sometimes when things like this happen, it's the first to be cut. And we did see that there were a lot of marketing teams that were being shrunk, that were shrinking when all of this happened. So we're a little bit worried that, is this the end of marketing, or what's going to happen? But what we've noticed, and again, this term's used a lot, it's unprecedented, and you don't know what's going to happen. It's the same with being a marketing team in this environment. You don't know what's going to happen and what the trends are going to be and what the behaviour of the customer is going to be, or anything like that. So what we've found is, it's actually, I'm busier than ever. I actually find that the marketing activity is ramped up. More people are at home, more people are watching TV, more people are searching the net, more people are actually doing activities that, and on channels that we can actually access them as marketers. So I think, if anything, it's changed for the better. The way we do things, and obviously there's not as many face-to-face events. There's virtual conferences and thought leadership events that we put on as well. So it's slightly different, but it's definitely hasn't slowed down. I think it's just changed the landscape slightly.
Yeah, and I think that one of the great things about this current climate as well is that it gives brands an opportunity to be a little bit more real with their customers. Like, we're all in this together. Nobody knows the current climate. Nobody knows what's happening next. We're all unpacking what it means to be a marketer or to work for something in this kind of state in our lives. So that is just awesome advice. So thank you for that. We've got some really great questions that are coming through, actually. This one might be a little bit tricky, but can you tell us a time when you actually failed, sometime in your career, and what did you learn from it?
So we're not talking about uni. I definitely failed some subjects at uni, so don't stress if that happens. It's not the end of the world. Where have I failed? I think I remember working on a campaign a few years ago. It would have been there would have been millions put into this campaign, and we did a whole heap of work to get it out and push it onto TV. And we had a new leader come in and sort of said, no, this is all wrong. It doesn't really align with the business's objective. It's not how I want the brand to be perceived in the market. And the whole thing was scrapped. I mean, all that hard work that you put into a campaign, and to have the whole thing scrapped, I think you do feel a sense of failure. Why wasn't my work good enough? Or, why, we spent so much money. Surely we could have pushed that out to market. But I think I learned so much from that experience. It's actually not worth, if your company isn't completely on board, or people aren't completely on board with what you're working on, then there's no point pushing things out to market. And that was okay. We ended up producing another campaign that was even better, and I learned quite a lot from that experience.
Yeah, wonderful. It just goes to show that sometimes, just actually stuffing up. I mean, in life, you just, the lessons that you learn from it, and, it's just something that it's such an important lesson to learn as well, how to actually take a failure and then move on from it. And sometimes the quicker the better. So, yeah, that's awesome advice. Thanks for that. Just a couple more before we end up with a couple of questions from you as well. One that I thought would be really interesting for you to answer is, do you manage live events as well? Do you manage live events such as conferences, or do you mainly just work on campaigns?
Primarily campaigns, but I guess when you work for a large organisation, I think, as a campaign manager, whilst you might not be responsible for delivering something like a conference or an event, it could be a form of activity that contributes to your campaign as a channel. So you might work with the events people in your organisation to deliver something like that. It depends on the size of the organisation, because some smaller organisations you'll do everything. You'll have a multifaceted role, and you will do absolutely everything, which is fine because you broaden your skill set. But in a company like mine, we more sort of focus on our specific areas, and mine is primarily sponsorship and partnerships. But we definitely do use conferences and events to ladder up to, I guess, the bigger goal and what we want to achieve. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So it kind of, you could even, a part of a campaign could be a live event kind of thing. Is that what you're sort of saying?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, we're doing some at the moment with Medibank. So, we're running a thought leadership series where we have some people that are really sort of high profile in the mental health space, or we have Tim Robards, the old bachelor that takes us for that takes our corporate customers for a workout, and we have someone that runs a meditation session for our corporate customers as well. So a whole heap of activity in that space. But again, the landscape's changed. It's all online now, but they're still considered events, and that they are really successful.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for answering those questions. That's great. I think, it just goes to prove that there are so many people that are interested in a career within marketing, and it is very, very popular. If there is someone at home or at school right now that's listening and they're like, yeah, right, I definitely want to get on this path. I want to get into marketing, maybe even in the financial services sector or not-for-profit, or, we're in such a tricky time at the moment, but what is one thing that they can do right now that will actually benefit them further when they want to get into that career?
I feel like I sort of bang on about this all the time, but I think, I've already mentioned this, I think it's so important to build your network, and you can do that right now. I think never underestimate the power of strong relationships. But I think in doing that, and building your network, I think still stay true to who you are. So doesn't necessarily mean you need to force yourself to be an extrovert or change who you are to do this, because, introverts and extroverts both add value to the workplace in different ways equally. And I think that would be my biggest piece of advice, just building your network. And building your network could be as small as, just reaching out to someone on LinkedIn, or, connecting, with a friend of a friend who's in an industry that you want to be in. Don't underestimate the power of a conversation and the power and strength of relationships, because it'll really build a foundation for you for when you actually decide, what career you want to get into.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's such a great tip. And, I think too that there is a really great way of asking someone to be part of your kind of crew, or maybe, having a digital mentor or contacts. It's more about, being lovely and being nice and welcoming, as opposed to, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Can you help me with this? So, there are ways of doing it, but I think that just, networking is it's actually one of the most important things that you can do. Yeah. So thank you very much for that, Michelle. There is one question that's popped up that I'm going to ask before we finish off this morning. And that's, and the reason why I'm asking you this question is because I know that you value fitness and health as part of your life as well. So, what are some of the best tips for managing stress day to day and keeping focused during a busy campaign period?
I think it's just being being easy. Like, everyone's a little bit hard on themselves, I think, when it comes to their own work. And I think it's being okay with, things not being perfect. I think it's impossible for things to be perfect all the time. There's going to be mistakes made. And I think you've just got to be a little bit easier on yourself. As I mentioned before, like 100% of your time shouldn't be dedicated to work or study. It should be about balancing your life, relationships with your friends, your hobbies, and making sure that you do get time to yourself. And I think for me, that's one thing that I've been, particularly during a time like this where, I've been stuck working from home since March. I think in order to manage stress and busy periods like I'm going through at the moment, it's just, a bit of self-care and taking some time out to do things that you actually like. And, you might take more breaks during the day than you normally would, but that's totally okay.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, great advice. A question that I would love to know from you, and this is a question that we're going to be asking pretty much all of our guests over the next 2 days, is cast your mind back to Michelle at high school, which isn't that long ago, let's be honest. So cast your mind back to Michelle at high school, 17-year-old Michelle, finishing high school, cast your mind back then, and actually what's one bit of advice that you would give that girl back then in regards to her career?
I think I'd say, Michelle, it's okay to not know what career path you want to follow. I think there's no age limit on creating a different path for yourself. Who says you can't change careers at 30 or 50 or 60 if you're really not happy? I think there's always options. And I think changing your career path doesn't make you less determined, or it doesn't make you unambitious. I think you need to do what makes you happy, and sometimes changing paths takes courage, and I think that really should be applauded.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. God, in hindsight, what a great piece of advice to give yourself, hey? So,
Totally.
Michelle, well, I just wanted to sincerely thank you for coming on to CareerCon, and for sharing your story and, and all those great tips, and particularly on your, on the skill sets that you believe that people need in order to get into your career. So thank you so much. And
Thanks
that was an awesome chat. No, you're welcome.
Great. Thank you so much.
Oh,
yeah.
you're welcome. No problem. Well, we'll be back shortly with our next speaker of the day. So please hang around and we'll see you soon.